Good morning. Like Andy, I feel incredibly lucky to get to talk to a room of librarians for 2 days in a row. Because to be honest, as a little girl growing up in Maine in a family that might not have had a lot of money but was rich in a shared love of reading, the weekly trips to the library were much anticipated adventures, and the librarians were rock stars, as Jordan said. These adventures always invariably ended with trying to figure out just how many books one could fit under your chin as you're walking out the door. The answer was 12, and eventually my mom made me bring a tote bag. It's no wonder that all of us here feel a deep emotional attachment and professional awe for who you are and what you do. You help shape communities, open the doors of discovery, stir curiosity, and create memories. You are definitely cooler than rock stars. Today, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce you to someone else I'm in professional awe of. Francesca Hornak, whose debut novel has captured our hearts and which is a big focus title for Berkeley this fall. So imagine you're gathering with your family for the holidays for the first time in years. Now let's say none of you can leave the house for a week. Everything you prefer not to share or discuss, none of that's going to stay hidden for long. Such is the case in Francesca's incredibly smart, poignant 7 Days of Us. In this novel, the Birch family agrees to spend Christmas together in a week-long quarantine at their country estate when their eldest daughter returns from an aid mission treating an epidemic abroad. And of course, they all have secrets. Francesca's incisive social commentary and empathy for the characters she's thrust into this pressure cooker scenario are truly captivating. She writes in the tradition of Jonathan Tropper, Emma Straub, and David Nichols, but brings her own brilliant voice and unforgettable characters to the page. Francesca is a journalist whose work has appeared in publications like The Sunday Times, The Guardian, Elle, Marie Claire, and many others. She is best known in the UK for her Sunday Times column, A History of the World in 100 Modern Objects. Her family does have a country home in Norfolk where the book is set, but she assures me they have yet to be caught in quarantine there. I am so pleased for you to meet Francesca Hornak.
Hi everyone, thank you Amanda for a lovely introduction. I have to say there's something so surreal about being asked to give a speech like this as a novelist when your novel hasn't even been published. So, and there's something even more surreal and dreamlike about the prospect of you, the librarian rock stars, recommending my novel to your readers and that book going back and forth from your libraries to people's homes. So it's such a privilege to be able to speak to you today. Thank you. I'm one of those really unadventurous people who effectively lives in the village where I grew up. It's just that this village is quite close to the centre of London, so people don't always realise that I'm that small town person. And because of that, I live still very close to the library that I always went to as a child. So I have a real circle of life feeling about Central Library on Holloway Road. I don't know if anyone knows Nick Hornby's High Fidelity, but Holloway Road features there. It's this really grubby, busy street that it just kind of stubbornly refuses to gentrify. It doesn't matter how many coffee shops they open, it never changes. But Central Library is this magnificent white stone building just in the middle, and it's always been a real oasis and a kind of haven to me. My whole life, I've got really early memories of hearing Goodnight Moon at story time in the children's library, where I now take my children. And as a teenager, I used to go to what they called the quiet study room that wasn't that quiet. We'd pass notes the whole time. And then at university, I wouldn't study hard enough. I'd have to come and cram at the home library back in the holidays. So it was Central Library, not Oxford University's library, that got me through that degree. And more recently, 3 years ago when I had my first son, my study at home became the nursery, the desk became a crib. And I didn't really have anywhere to call my own at home anymore, and I went back to the quiet study room and I wrote a lot of this novel in there, same graffiti on the desks and everything. And even better is taking my two sons now to the children's library and seeing them light up at the same room that I used to. So thank you so much. Actually, my husband, who's looking after them, should be singing Bar Bar Black Sheep right now, not because I've sent him over the edge by leaving him for a week with these children, but because they do rhyme time every week there on Thursdays, and it's a really special thing for all the new mothers. So thank you so much, librarians, for all of that. As Amanda said, I'm a journalist. I've been asked a lot why this week why I decided to move over to fiction. the short answer is that a lot of what I wrote as a journalist was fiction anyway. I know you probably say the same for many journalists, but this wasn't fake news, and no one's ever even tried to pass my stuff off as fact. My main thing, as Amanda said, was this column called Modern Objects, where I take some ubiquitous thing like the Croc shoe or the Nespresso machine, the selfie stick, and I write a really short story about the object and its owner, its typical owner. And one day a literary agent emailed me to say, would I like to make the columns into a book? And of course I said yes, that sounds great. And in that really fun process I realised this was much more what I should have been doing than trying to figure out the truth and report it. I was much better at making stuff up. So around that same time, my oldest friend, who's a doctor, went to volunteer at an Ebola treatment centre in Sierra Leone. And while they were there, she and all the other aid workers, they had this no-touch rule where you had to stand a metre away from everybody at all times. And even more important, when she came back, she and her parents weren't really supposed to leave their house for about a month. They were in they call it a voluntary quarantine. And now she has a really functional, lovely family, but when she told me, I thought that could be a really fun fictional device to force on a more dysfunctional family. And my second thought was that if I had this quarantine take place over Christmas, it would just kind of intensify that claustrophobia of the holiday season that I think too many of us know quite well. Even with a lovely family, you can be ready to go by Boxing Day. Well, I don't think you have Boxing Day here, but by the 26th, that is. So that was the first spark. The second idea I had was to take elements of the story of the prodigal son, which has always been a really favourite fable of mine, because I just think those themes of sibling rivalry and unconditional parental love and second chances, they're so enduring, and you could just take that story and transpose it to the present, have one child wasting their trust fund, the other staying at home working hard, but I felt with my quarantine scenario I had a chance to turn it round. So you have the estranged sibling is a kind of crusading do-gooder, but because she's always off saving the world, she's sort of alienated herself from her own family. And meanwhile, the loyal sibling is a kind of over-dependent millennial who is very kind of spoiled, but much closer to her parents as a result. So the next thing I needed was a place to quarantine this family in, and as Amanda said, I chose a corner of England called Norfolk, mostly because it's very familiar to me, but it also has a really bleak, very flat landscape that I felt suited this story I was about to tell. I toyed with a few types of houses, and then I thought something quite big, so you have some changes of scene with some drafty attics and a cellar and the grounds and the outbuildings, and so that became Wayfield Hall. And the other thing about this property is it's an inherited house, so the mother has quite a different relationship to it. It's her childhood home to everyone else who really just wishes they'd get the central heating in, and it's not that much fun. The next thing I needed, of course, was the characters in more detail and their secrets, because of course they had to have secrets if they were going to be stuck in this house. As I said, I knew one sibling was going to be the aid worker, and I really formed everyone else in opposition to her. So she's called Olivia, she's 32, and she's a doctor like my friend, but otherwise nothing in common. And she's just back from treating a fictional epidemic in Liberia. Olivia's quite an earnest, serious character. She's very good at her job, but she's quite hard to be around at home because she's very intolerant and quite judgmental of her family's creature comforts, even in this drafty old house. And this is the first Christmas she's been actually home in years. And her secret is that while she was in Liberia, she broke the no-touch rule, the metre-apart rule, by having an affair with another doctor, who subsequently, they hear on the news, has caught the virus. So she's then in the very uncomfortable position of wondering if she's sickening the whole time. I'm quite a hypochondriac, so I felt for her and that every time she's like, oh, it's about to start. Her younger sister Phoebe is the opposite. She's very charming and fun, but she's quite self-absorbed, as I said, and she's really just thinking about planning her upcoming wedding. Her secret, although she's not aware of it, is that her fiancé is in fact gay. Their mother, Emma, is a kind of manic mumsy warrior. She's always fussing over everybody and keeping up this sort of forced cheerfulness, even though her marriage is getting increasingly distant. She's also recently been diagnosed with cancer, so her immune system is very fragile, but she's decided she's not going to tell her family until after the quarantine, because she doesn't want her daughter to be put off coming home for one Christmas. So she's shouldering that on her own. Her husband Andrew is a very acerbic restaurant critic at a newspaper, not based on myself, I haven't reviewed restaurants. His thing is that he's really yearning for his glory days when he was younger as a foreign correspondent. He's very close to Phoebe, who's a kind of daddy's girl, the younger daughter that is, but he and Olivia the doctor are quite stiff and awkward with each other, and believe they don't have anything at all in common. His secret is that as a young man reporting on the Lebanese civil war, he fathered a son who has recently been bombarding him with emails trying to meet up. And that son is my final character, Jesse. And Jesse grew up with his adoptive family in Iowa, and he's now a very warm, emotionally articulate, gay, vegan man living in LA. And all I can really tell you about Jesse, without spoiling the story, is that he doesn't start in Wayfield Hall in the house with them, but he does end up in it. So I hope that has piqued your curiosity, and that you'll join the Birches, they're called the Birches, this family, under house arrest and enjoy your stay with them. And thank you so much again for this opportunity to tell you